You're probably sick of hearing about the metaverse by now, and I don't blame you. Ever since Facebook changed its name to Meta, it has become a buzzword. But the fact that your head starts spinning when you see another article about the metaverse has a reason. You see, the term metaverse existed long before Facebook became Meta. The author Neil Stephenson coined the term in his cyberpunk book Snow Crash, released in 1992. Stephenson is a freaking psychic. In the early 90s, he predicted the internet of today and talked about Wi-Fi, smartphones, cryptocurrency, MMORPGs, and even VR and AR headsets. He wrote about this at a time when almost no one even knew what the internet was. So when he envisions the metaverse, maybe he's onto something. He sees the metaverse as a digital twin of our own world with its own economy. It's populated by 3D objects and avatars of human users interacting like they are in the real world. And it's not only about gaming. This digital world can transform every aspect of our lives. The way we learn, socialize, work, shop, and travel. Maybe even replace some of the real-life versions of it. That's why big tech companies think it's the next big thing. Experts estimate the metaverse's potential market value to be 8 to 13 trillion by 2030. This also means lots of new opportunities to make money in the metaverse. So it isn't strange that everyone wants a piece of the pie. But the silly thing is, no one really knows what the metaverse will look like yet. Too many companies are working on their vision of the metaverse, all hoping to become the biggest. As you probably know, Meta is investing all they have into their version of the metaverse. But it's kind of like Mark Zuckerberg going all in at a poker game without being entirely sure of his hand. Stock investors have not enjoyed it. Chances are that Zuckerberg's hand isn't the winning one, but whose cards are. It's hard to say who will win this early in the game, as this company might not exist yet, but based on Stephenson's book, these films and current world happenings, we can predict what the metaverse will look like in 2030, and honestly, it blows my mind. So what does the metaverse look like that you and I want to log into every single day? Okay, maybe not Sword Art Online since, you know. To find out, I'm going to compare two extremes. There is a company doing it almost the opposite from Meta, and you've heard of them already. It's HTC Vive. Full disclosure, HTC sponsored this video, but I would not have taken this on if this wasn't a subject that I genuinely love geeking out over. This way, I get more freedom to research it to my heart's content. Remember, we never accept review directions, so a big thanks to HTC for supporting the channel today. HTC Vive has been working on their own version of the metaverse called VIVERSE, and while their marketing can be silly, really silly, they seem to have taken a lot of inspiration from Stephenson's book. I hear you thinking, but Cas, metaverses already exist. I'm already a Pokemon in VR chat. And you're right, games like VR chat, Rec Room, Fortnite, and even Roblox are already like a metaverse. But these are centralized games, meaning developers decide the rules in these games. You don't get a say in it, and it doesn't exactly influence the whole world. If the metaverse is going to be the next big thing, an important factor is decentralization. This means that the digital economy isn't controlled by one entity, one government, and definitely not one company. What happens in the metaverse stays in the metaverse. I'm just kidding. The rules in this metaverse should be decided by you, its own users. There are already decentralized metaverses that made it work, like Decentraland, Axie Infinity, or Somnium Space. Anyone with a stake in the platform's cryptocurrency has a say in the decision making. This means not even the Galactic Empire can roll out a restricting update without user consent. HTC Vive's approach seems to align with this. The Viveverse is decentralized, so HTC Vive doesn't save or control your data. It makes use of blockchain technology and allows you to log in with a crypto wallet, so the data can be kept there. On the other hand, Meta seems to have this idea to have you logging into their metaverse to go on business meetings, visit concerts, and partying with friends, but all that only works within the confined corporate walls of Meta apps. HTC wants to make the VIVERSE more like a gateway, a portal that connects existing content with new ones, a vastly different approach. Now, this is not me telling you which metaverse is better, but showing you what's currently out there. I mean, both platforms are still very, very early, so it's gonna change a lot over time. And right now, we're just not there yet. All the experiences and apps that I talked about here are still walled off experiences. You cannot use your Rec Room level 50 loot to slay in Axie Infinity yet. But what will entice you to jack into it every day? Probably something that has a lot of content. That doesn't happen though if there aren't eager creators making stuff for it. Something that has proven to work for this is open source. Before Google became such a dominant force, it used an open source approach to get its code to as many developers as possible at no cost. So anyone could take the code and help make it better. This is what brought Google to the top of the food chain. It seems the way to go for the metaverse. Both Meta and HTC Vive are embracing open source in a big way. But if you want a lot of content, creators should be free to make what they want. Imagine an internet where one company decides every website that can go live on the internet. That would be boring and restrictive. Meta has always strictly curated the content on their platform, which is sometimes understandable, but this shouldn't be decided by one company. VIVERSE's policy seems to be freer. They allow you to add what you want to your world without checking it. I checked. Whether this is curated at all, I couldn't find out, but I hope that it will be the users. Still, these things do not change the world just yet. That probably only happens when it all comes together. Right now, your avatar kicking and jumping around in Boneworks feels vastly different from walking around in Rec Room because the physics in Boneworks is just coded differently than in Rec Room. So how do you connect so many worlds that are so different? It needs universal standards to connect experiences and to make them interoperable, which is just a geeky way to say work nicely together. Before the internet got universal standards and protocols like HTML, HTTP and TCP/IP, navigating it was a massive pain in the butt. It was like you want to get to a few planets but have no spaceship to fly. I mean, you may not even know what these standards do, but you're using it. Now, both Meta and HTC Vive are working on this. Meta, however, isn't transparent in what they are working on, so they seem to want to make their own standard that others can use and link to, and honestly, with their track record, scary. HTC's approach is to work with existing VR developers to develop or use existing universal standards to connect apps. VIVERSE using blockchain technology can help with this. It allows you to save whatever you create in a crypto wallet. This makes it possible to quickly bring your digital things to another platform that supports the same tech. A different example is VIVERSE's avatars support VRM files. This is a file with all your 3D avatar personality traits in there, like the color of your hair. Since it's a standard that works with many different VR and AR apps, bringing your avatar to a separate app is easy. If every app used the same standard, you could design an avatar in Rec Room while your faraway cousin creates something in VR chat. If you decide to meet up in the metaverse now, you can still see both your designs without having to move humongous data. Now it seems that Nvidia is working on something similar with a different standard, and more companies are looking into exactly this. So in 2030, we may finally agree on universal standards that everyone uses. Now imagine a decentralized company using the metaverse from start to finish with people from all around the world, and they never have to meet in person. This is already happening in enterprise. For example, the city of Paris uses the tech to simulate their entire city to see how they could design and construct buildings more efficiently with architects from all around the globe. However, if it's going to be as big as the internet, it needs mass user adoption, which can only happen if it's accessible on any device, anytime and anywhere. Unfortunately, limitations make this a challenge. VR and AR headsets needs to become cheaper and more comfortable, and there are things to think about like mental health, addiction, and distorted reality. But a small step in the right direction is HTC making use of WebXR, meaning you can access the VIVERSE on any browser and don't need to use a VR headset. You can also walk around using a keyboard, mouse, smartphone, or tablet. And it looks like Meta wants to do the same. And lots of companies are working on more ergonomic headsets too. Some you may have already seen or heard of, and some are secretly working at it. Believe me. So it's coming, it just needs time. It's estimated to take 10 years before all this comes together, and there are still no sure things, but it seems that the 2030 metaverse I want to check into daily would build on this decentralized and interoperable model. It probably doesn't matter whether that's HTC's, Nvidia's, or Meta's, as their metaverses might become just a part of something much bigger. But while Zuckerberg is building the metaverse as he imagines it, I was intrigued to see how other companies like HTC Vive sees the metaverse and approaches it differently. The VIVERSE is still in very early stages, and you can see that. It's bare bones and doesn't have many customization options, but they're looking for people who want to try it out now and maybe help them improve it. So I'll link it below, you can check it out there. For now, I'm definitely gonna continue watching this space because I think this digital future is the coolest thing ever, and I want to be ready for it. Don't get me wrong, I don't want the metaverse to replace our real life, but wouldn't it be just epic to have an oasis without the dystopian crazy stuff? Let me know in the comments below what you think, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you couldn't hear that last week I was sick from COVID, but I am better now and I am back. So please leave me a like if you enjoyed it, and as always, ik zie je in VR.